I'm excited. I'm fired up, man. We got Tigers baseball to root for. Obviously, we have Lions stuff coming out. We have the perfect guest to help us break that down. Jeremy Reisman covers the Detroit Lions for Pride of Detroit. Doesn't really need much of introduction. We're going to get into it with him. Preseason, schedule, all the stuff's going on this offseason. But please welcome Jeremy Reisman to the show. How you doing, Jeremy? What's going on, brother?
What's up, fellas? How we doing?
You know what, Jeremy? We're talking Tigers, which is fun. You know, we get to talk about other winning organizations in Detroit, which is, it's something I'm getting used to still. But I want to ask you, before we get to the schedule, before we get to all the other things that are relevant with the Lions, I want to start with what happened today. We got the preseason schedule, which, Jeremy, I've never been more excited about a damn preseason schedule. Like, I was so fired up today about it. So I'm looking at this preseason schedule, and me and the fellas talked today about some players that I think could really utilize it. And there's so many. Obviously, Hendon Hooker we talked about. But when you saw it in your mind, thinking about the preseason and how the Lions like to use it as kind of a developmental side of things to help guys that are late round picks or guys that are kind of projects, who's a player in your mind that could gain a lot from the preseason, this upcoming preseason in your mind?
I think, the first name that comes to mind is Hendon Hooker, right? A guy that just needs reps and reps and reps. It's the only way he's going to get better. And it really seems like the Lions have lined things up for him to be the backup quarterback this year. But if you're a Lions fan, if you're Hendon Hooker, if you're the Detroit Lions, you probably want to make sure he's actually ready in case you need him in an emergency type situation. And we really don't know where he's at. We saw him get better last offseason. By the end of the preseason, he was a lot better than he was at the beginning of the preseason, but I'm not sure he was at a point in which Lions fans were really excited for him to be the primary backup. Obviously, the Lions wanted to have a backup plan in the playoffs when they brought in Teddy Bridgewater, but he's got to be at the top of the list. But there's so many of those young developmental guys too that Giovanni Manu is probably really, really high on that list. Broderick Martin is still high on that list. I know every Lions fan kind of has him buried, and I certainly think he's got a long climb to make it to the 53 this year. But how many times have we seen Lions players within this organization, within this regime, break out in year 3? He's only been in the league for 2 years, and we knew it was going to be a long-term project for him too. So I think you have to at least open up the possibility that Broderick Martin could, take full opportunity of this preseason ahead of him. And there's going to be a little bit of an open roster spot at the defensive tackle with Aleem McNeil almost certainly going to start the season on PUP. So I think those are maybe the 3 guys I would pay attention to the most.
Hey, Jeremy, you're the perfect. It's so funny. We have these arguments. You're the perfect person to settle an argument because you are in the building. And we argued today. We've actually not even today. We've been arguing for, the last year. Actually, not year. It's a couple months. But when they brought in Teddy, can you please, just in your opinion, say your own opinion, why do you think they brought in Teddy? Was it A, because Hendon is maybe just not there and they don't really are he's not developing the way we think he is? Or is it more of an experience thing? What do you think in your mind? Just based on covering them.
I don't know if you can separate the two, right? There's a little bit of both. I don't think, and they've said it multiple times now, they weren't disappointed with where Hendon Hooker was. It's just a matter of he's another guy that's it was always going to take some seasoning before they were ready to actually throw him out there, right? Loses pretty much all of his rookie season. He gets a couple practices in at the end of his rookie season. We knew, the offense that he was running in college was pretty elementary. He kind of pushed back when people said that about him, but kind of a fact is a fact. And so, this is his year 2. This is his year 2.5, whatever you want to call it. And so when they brought in Teddy, it wasn't surprising to me. It wasn't a sign that they're disappointed with where Hendon was at. It was, hey, we're in the playoffs. We can't afford to lose. It would be kind of irresponsible for us to go throw out a guy there who's only been practicing in the league for a year and has gotten almost no reps at all. So I don't know. I think that was just them thinking, hey, we got a chance at a Super Bowl. If we're going to need anybody to help us get there, even if it is for just one series, which it turned out to be, which is what they needed, we'd rather put a veteran out there. And I think that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth about this, Jeremy.
It makes perfect sense, Jeremy. It makes perfect sense.
It does. Jeremy, what I said, it makes sense that you bring a guy in with experience. I just can't seem to wrap my head around Hendon being the age he is going into the year 3, and they had to bring in 5 months ago, a quarterback there's something about it to me where it irks me a little bit to where it's,
Sure.
let's maybe look at another backup quarterback, because Hendon, you're going into year 3. Maybe he's not the guy we thought, but like you said, preseason, I guess we will find out, but I'll change the topic because this is going to keep us going all night. Can I ask you about Alex Anzalone? Because I think this is an interesting topic. And there are a lot of times where kind of rumors kind of just start to swirl, and maybe there's stuff that doesn't mean anything. But the Angel stuff is interesting to me. I don't know if you noticed as well, but he had put a couple of those tweets out, and I went back and couldn't find the Trey Hendrickson tweet. So I think he took some tweets down as well. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it seemed like he took some down, and there's obviously been something going on with him in the contract situation. Do you think this is something that will kind of bleed into training camp or even over the next couple months, just based off of maybe the Lions? This is one of those guys that is lower on their kind of totem pole, to say, compared to other guys like Aiden Hutchinson and Jack Campbell next year and stuff. What do you see coming out of this whole situation with Anza?
Yeah, it is pretty interesting, right? Because he was tweeting a lot of things about guys getting paid. I think kind of all offseason he's been retweeting things about, stats out there that have shown how valuable he is to the team.
Highlights, everything.
Yeah. And I don't recall him ever doing stuff like that where he's kind of like tooting his own horn and things like that. It doesn't kind of seem like the player he is or the person he is necessarily. So I definitely think there is a want, especially like now that you see these linebackers getting paid, right? He's never been a product of that. He's been around the league for 10 years when the linebacker position has been undervalued. And now he finds himself on a team where he is valued, and he is, a centerpiece of what they do. We've heard Lions coaches refer to him as kind of like that core of players that mean so much to how they've gotten to where they are and continuing to rise. And so, I think a lot of people have noticed he's not in like the photo galleries of the offseason program. That to me is not a sign necessarily that he's upset. If I'm not mistaken, he usually trains on his own, and he's a guy that definitely values family time. So like if you check his Instagram, he's like hanging out with his kids. I think his mom is coaching one of the kids' soccer team. Like, he's a family man. He's a guy who I think can properly compartmentalize work and family, which is not something that a lot of football players can do. And so I don't think there's necessarily like bad blood or anger or anything like that. I think he's just like, hey, I want to get paid. And when I need to come in and practice with the team, I'll come in for mandatory minicamp. I'll come in for training camp and get that done. But we know the Lions are all about transparency. So I don't think they're going to be bothered by Alex Anzalone kind of like largely hinting that he wants to get paid. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me for the Lions to do it. I know everyone thinks they're in penny pinching mode, and in a lot of ways they are. And you'd think maybe they'd prioritize their young players, the guys that are coming off rookie contracts and things like that. But I think there's also going to be a place for a guy like Alex Anzalone, because I think Dan Campbell has a tremendous amount of respect for him. I think they know the value that he brings to the team. And quite frankly, I'm not sure what the plan is once you're without Alex Anzalone. You have two linebackers that I think you can rely on for the long term in Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes. But who's three? Because Malcolm Rodriguez's contract is also up next year. So I think it would make sense to lock up Alex Anzalone for another year or two at least. Give him the pay raise that he probably already deserves. Although, when you're paying someone, you're supposed to be paying for, the seasons ahead, not for time served necessarily. But, one of our writers, Al Karsten, wrote a really good article today, just listing like a large amount of linebackers in their mid to early 30s, still playing at a really high level. And Alex Anzalone is playing the best football he has in his career right now. So I think the Lions are going to think he's worth it.
I don't want to put you on the spot here real quick, Jeremy, but do you have an idea of maybe what his contract would look like if they were, because we've thrown around numbers here on the show, 10, 12 million, but you do see some of these higher end linebackers getting more than that. And you just saw Derek get 8 or 7 or 8. What is there a number that you have in mind that he might get?
Honestly, I think you guys nailed it. I think like the 10 to 12 range makes a lot of sense given his age, given, it's probably going to be a relatively short-term deal. I think maybe you just make a lot of that guaranteed, like a 2-year, $22 million with like 17, 18 million guaranteed. I think that's totally fair. It doesn't bog you down completely. You can play some cap gymnastics and spread that out a little bit over time with some void years and things like that. So I think the Lions can make it work for them. It's going to tighten the belt a little bit, but you see how much cap room they have right now, and there's a reason why they're not using it, right? They're going to try to carry over as much as possible. Hopefully they don't have to use as much as they had to last year with injuries and things like that. But I do think they're going to make way for the budget for Alex Anzalone just for how much they respect the guy.
Love that.
That's music to my ears, Jeremy. And because Anzalone has went out there and proven it. And kind of going back to the preseason talk, somebody that wasn't able to prove it last year, and it's going to be difficult for him to prove in the regular season this year. That's why I think preseason so it's important for him, is Ennis Rakestraw. What do you expect out of Ennis Rakestraw during preseason and kind of bleeding into the regular season? Because he's somebody where second-round pick, missed all last year due to injury, and then now you add DJ Reed, Amik Robertson really showed what he can do. Terry Arnold's there, Rocky Sin. It's a packed cornerback room depth-wise. Where does Ennis kind of carve himself a role, do you think?
It's a good question because last week before all the press conferences with the coaches, I probably would have told you, well, he's going to be he's going to compete for a starting job at nickel. That seemed to be the easiest path for him to get on the field, and probably the best place for him to provide some depth, even if Amik wins out the job there, because you're like, okay, if Amik goes down, what's the plan at backup nickel? Is it Avonte Maddox? Is it Ennis Rakestraw? Because we know if there's an injury on the outside cornerback position, we know Amik can step in there and be okay. Yeah. But Deshae Townsend said pretty clearly, like, they're focusing on the outside cornerback position for Ennis, which means the only way he's going to make it onto the field really this year seems like it's going to be if there's an injury, which no one is asking for. And it's interesting though. Like, I still think the long-term goal for him should be at nickel, right? Because Amik is not signed long-term. Maybe Amik gets a second contract here. Maybe he doesn't. I just find it interesting. Maybe it's just a thing where they want him to be the next Amik Robertson, kind of like how I think they're treating Tate Ratledge. Like, they want Tate Ratledge to be the next Graham Glasgow, where he can play guard, but he can also slide over to center if they need him. Maybe the plan here is, hey, and this is eventually going to be the starting nickel, but we want him to learn that outside cornerback position as well as possible so that he has the same versatility that Amik does. That's the only way that it makes sense to me, because otherwise you spend a second-round pick on a third stringer on your CB3, which, I mean, I get you kind of have to lower your standard for second-round picks when this roster is so good, but I just think you're underutilizing him if he's going to be your backup outside cornerback. I think he has the potential to be a starting nickel.
Yeah, Jeremy, I got a love-hate relationship with the offseason. Obviously, it's when all this, like, the conversations that are irrelevant start happening, and you have so much more experience dealing with this than I do. So I'm still, like, adapting to it all. And it's nationally really more so because, I mean, I'm seeing Bleacher Report throw out 9-8. It's baffling to me that a team that won 15 games, all the injuries, can go to 9-8, but I digress. I'll ask you, the schedule's out. When you look at it, I think we all had around the same win total. I think I had 12, Booner had 13, Lukas had 11. So we're kind of in that double-digit win range. But then you see NFL.com say they're the most vulnerable to lose the division. When you look at that schedule, what was kind of – I know. When you look at that schedule, what did you think initially, and then just kind of throughout the schedule, maybe the difficulty of it and how many games and all that stuff, division winning?
Well, first, I want to warn you, it's only going to get worse in the offseason.
Oh, thank you.
Like, once all the analysts are making their official season predictions, and everyone, the guys that want to be different are all picking the Bears to win the division. Just like, I'm trying to mentally prepare you for that, because that's what's going to happen. I can guarantee you. But yeah, I mean, all the obvious stuff are the ones that stuck out. The fact that they have, probably the toughest road schedule in football. They have 5 primetime games. 12 of the 16 that we know of right now are all nationally televised. Week 18 could very well make it 13 once we just figure out where that's at. But yeah, I mean, the Lions have been taking it to like the best teams in the NFL over the past couple of years. They've gone toe to toe with the league's best, and so they're going to lose a couple of those games for sure, but they're probably going to win more than they lose, even against like the best teams, because they've taken down Kansas City. They've taken down the entire division last year, and maybe it got better, but it probably didn't get that significantly better. And we've seen them, hang tough with other teams on the road. We've seen them playing prime time on the road. They went undefeated on the road last year. And so, yeah, it's tough, but everyone has the Lions on their schedules looking at that game and like, oop, that's probably a loss. So, they're daunting games in which I probably wouldn't pick them to win right now. Like at Baltimore is probably the toughest one I would say on the schedule because Lamar just beats up on NFC teams and the Lions have literally never won in Baltimore unless maybe you're talking about the Baltimore Colts. Maybe they won a game there. But other than that, like it's just, I understand it looks difficult. I have them at 12 wins right now too, but I don't feel like it's going to go, -2 of that prediction. I still think the ceiling of this team is a 10-win team, and that's probably enough to at least make the playoffs, which is really the ultimate goal of the regular season now. Like, I know Dan Campbell will say, hey, we want to win the division. Hey, we want to get that 1 seed, but last year was proof enough that 1 seed doesn't guarantee you anything. Just kind of getting into the dance is really the most important part.
Yeah, Jeremy, I want one big thing, and I think everyone can kind of agree with this. The changing of the coordinators, and you were in the building the last week or so. John Morton and Kelvin Shepard spoke with the media. What are your initial thoughts? Obviously, you guys spoke with them months back when they got the job, and at the draft and the league meetings. But now being in the building, them working with players, what's the vibe you get from them? Are you kind of confident? The biggest one to me, to be honest, is the John Morton one, just because of the job he's taken over with the offense. Is your confidence kind of growing a little bit, or where are you at with John Morton taking over that offense?
I mean, a little bit. Really, the biggest and kind of only question for me with John Morton is play calling, and I just you're not going to know what that looks like until you see it, because he knows the offense, he knows the terminology. He was here 3 years ago. He has a comfort level with Jared Goff already. He worked with him kind of extensively in 2022, and so that relationship is fine. His attention to detail, I think, is just on the same level as Ben Johnson. We heard several stories about him in terms of just like the obsessive preparation that he does from Monday to Saturday in terms of, positional football and tendencies and things like that. And so I have no doubt that Monday through Saturday, he's going to be as good of an offensive coordinator as they need at that position. And, he continues to reiterate, like, I'm just going to run what's been working. Like, there's no reason for me to come here and overhaul everything. I'm going to add a little bit, but I'm not really going to chip away at what was working. And so the question is just, one thing that was Ben Johnson was really good at was kind of the progression of how he called plays, how, something he called in the first quarter would lead up to something in the third quarter that looked the same, but kind of, pulled the rug out from underneath the defense. Is that something that John Morton is capable of doing? John even admitted last week, which I thought was kind of like a really transparent, and I love the transparency, but maybe I wouldn't say made him look bad, but he was just like, yeah, the whole fourth down thing is something I'm going to have to adjust to. It's not really what I've done in the past. But I understand that's how we run things here in Detroit, and I'll do everything I can to adapt to that. But yeah, that is something that I have to learn. And that means, calling potentially different kind of plays on third down, maybe calling different plays on second down. And then obviously, kind of building out your fourth and short playbook as big as it could possibly get, because they're going to go for it a lot of times. So, I think some people outside of Detroit are exaggerating how, different and how bad it could get without Ben Johnson. But I think there are some fair questions, because there are a lot of, things we don't know at this point. And I think chief among them is just, again, how he manages the game on game day.
Do you think, go ahead, sorry, Klotz, I just want to follow up on that. Do you think that, because the conversation, Jeremy, is a lot of the times Dan Campbell maybe didn't have as much to do with the Ben Johnson. Do you think Dan has a lot to do with it, actually, all of those situational things? I feel like he does, and we get in conversations with people who watch, or maybe people on Twitter, and it's just like, it feels like some people underestimate how much of a hand Dan Campbell really had in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the entire overall philosophy of the offense and really the entire team is based on Dan Campbell. The aggression is based on Dan Campbell. The adherence to the run game, the making sure you're building out the offensive line and you're this tough, gritty team. All of that comes from Dan Campbell. And we even heard Dave Phipp go on a rant last week saying, like, y'all are still underestimating how smart this guy is. You guys still don't understand that this guy is a brilliant football mind. And he is. It's just, but he's also a delegator, right? And so when it comes to calling specific plays, I would say he's mostly hands off. He'll if it's 4th and 1, he'll be like, yeah, we're going for it. Probably if it's 3rd and 5, he's like, hey, if you get at least 3 yards, we're going for it. Like, he's going to tell that to John Morton ahead of time. But he's going to let John Morton pick his plays for the most part. There might be a situation in which he's really confident in a play in this situation and take the wheel. I'm certain he's done that before, even when Ben Johnson was here. But I think one of his best qualities is his ability to delegate and trust the people that he hires too. So I would say, like, macro, yes, this is very much Dan Campbell's offense. But when it comes to, like, the nitty gritty, the calling the plays and that sort of stuff, I think he's primarily hands off, but will kind of like stick his hand on the driver's wheel every now and then.
And kind of keeping going with the offensive conversation, specifically with John Morton, Jeremy, when he was talking, he also talked about a breakout potentially of Jameson Williams. And Scotty Montgomery kind of said the same thing. And when I hear that, again, this is my opinion, I don't think Jameson Williams can really do too much more statistically. Like, I think having 1,000 yards, the touchdown numbers that he did, I think he broke out last year. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if his numbers dipped a little bit, just because I think Sam Laporta, yards-wise, could have a little bit of a better season. I mean, he had a down season. He had like 700 yards, 7 touchdowns. Like, either way, any tight end would wish to have that season. What do you think a Jameson Williams breakout, like John Morton and Scotty Montgomery have talked about, looks like for Detroit Lions fans and for the rest of the team?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm kind of with you. Like, is there even enough ball to go around for him to get more than 1,000, maybe 1,200 yards or so? And it's hard to know. It's hard to know when we don't know what John Morton's tendencies are. It's hard to know when we don't. We haven't seen what apparently John Morton and Scotty Montgomery have seen. But I think in general, like on a down-to-down basis, you're just going to see him be more consistent. That's what it sounds like they're preaching here. Is that I think the thing that struck me most that both of them said was just like, he is fantastic in meetings. And as someone who watched Jameson Williams progress from, rehab from his injury to kind of a bumpy second season to everything he accomplished last year, I think the part that he struggled in with the game the most was mentally. It was just being in the right spot. It was getting to the right part on the field. It's taking the right amount of steps. It's all those attention to details that Ben Johnson was so harsh on. And that, I mean, you would see it all the time. Like every third game or so, there would just be a pass from Jared Goff to Jameson Williams, and they weren't on the same page. It would be, 10 yards away from where Jameson was. And, generally speaking, I would probably put that on Jameson more times than I would put it on Jared. I'm sure he shares some of the blame in some of those situations as well. I think it was the Minnesota game, the season finale. The Lions were deep in their own zone, throws like a bomb to JMO, and it's just like, it's nowhere near him, and he's not even, his head isn't turned. And so like those little blips, like they showed up a lot in 2023, far less in 2024. Now it sounds like everything is clicking with him, right? That's kind of the sense that I got, is that, it's never been about him not putting in the work. He's always been a guy that gives it his all in practice. You can see he wears his emotions on his sleeve in practice because he cares so much. Everyone I've ever really talked to has said the guy's work ethic is there. It was just, and this is me speaking, it didn't seem to be clicking necessarily every single specific thing that he needed to do on offense. And so now he's asking the right questions. He shows a deep understanding of the offense. And what does that look like on game day? I don't know. Does it look like 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns? Maybe it could. I'm not ruling it out.
He's got the talent.
He does. And maybe it just means instead of having, an 100-yard game and then a 20-yard gain and then a 200-yard game and then a 5-yard gain, maybe it just means like a bunch of 50-yard gains, a bunch of 60-yard games. Like it's just more consistent basis. And, when you look at the stat sheet at the end of the season, it might not look all that different, but I think you might see him just be more consistent down to down, game to game, week to week. And that'll be noticeable for sure.
Yep. Well, we appreciate you, Jeremy, taking time in your day to join the boys. Keep up the great work. We're all fans of yours. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Sounds good, fellas.
Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, FisherCTSports.com.